What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Daily Wolves Courtside. I'm here with my co-host Jack, also known as Bad Angle Basketball. And today we're here to talk about a Game 3 loss versus the San Antonio Spurs. So I guess let's hop right into it, Jack. What were your initial thoughts on tonight's game? I guess what went wrong for the Wolves? I guess if you make a few adjustments here and there, like how does the outcome change and how does Minnesota get a W?
I mean, it'd be helpful if number one for San Antonio wasn't out there first and
Yeah.
foremost. I mean, I think the Timberwolves are good enough to beat the Spurs on any given night, but he was outstanding tonight.
Yeah.
He was exceptional. Both ends of the floor absolutely dominated the game. I believe at one point, I think this ended up being true. He was the only of players that shot more than 2 field goals in this game who also weren't named Rudy Gobert. He was the only player to shoot over 50%. So you take out Rudy, you take out Cornette and Carter Bryant, who shot once and twice, respectively. No one else in the entire game shot over 50%. He was 13 of 18 from the floor and had 39 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 blocks. And as insufferable as the glazing can get from the broadcast teams on Wemby, like he'll be on the bench and somebody will miss a shot and they'll be like, oh, it looks like Wemby exhaled really hard on the bench there and affected that shot. It is true most of the time. His existence on the floor makes it really difficult for players to score in the same way that they're used to. And you could see that it impacted pretty much everyone on the Timberwolves. Even if he's not blocking shots, he's impacting possessions defensively. And he was dominant. I mean, that's the overwhelming sentiment there. I think it was so difficult for the Timberwolves to score tonight. And he was a massive reason why. They obviously have other really good defenders as well. But he and their defense made it so tough for us to score. And I thought we did enough defensively ourselves to win that game if they didn't have Wemby, because he just made tough shot after tough shot. I mean, some of the shots he's made, the three going over the flare screen, he's 7'5" coming off a
Yeah,
flare screen,
right.
shooting a three. And he's getting that offensive rebound where he just volleys it to himself and puts it in seamlessly. He was exceptional. I think far and away, like, I mean, it's stating the obvious, but there's probably little things you could say the Timberwolves could do differently here and there, but I think you'd be disingenuous to not just start with the fact that he dominated this game and he was a massive reason why they won.
Oh, 100%. And then everybody watching the game that wasn't at Target Center tonight, you guys saw in the broadcast that he was like the only other player in NBA history to come out and score like 35, have 15 and 5 blocks, joining Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, and I think Tim Duncan was the other one or something along
Be
those
good
lines.
company.
And yeah, and that's like the Mount Rushmore of bigs. Like that is the golden standard. And I would assume I'm realizing now I probably forgot Kareem. Kareem's probably in there somewhere, but like
Yeah.
he is at the golden standard, and the big question, or I guess the big talking point coming into this series was that young teams, inexperienced teams fold in the playoffs. And occasionally you do get an outlier, and it looks like we might have an outlier. I'm not ready to call this series over by any means, but dude, if Wemby's gonna come out and shoot 70% and have almost 40 points on 18 shots, it's gonna be a real tough series and a tough series to win for the Wolves. Um, Something else I kind of wanted to touch on tonight. Anthony Edwards, no minutes restriction. He's starting to look a lot more like himself. He had 32 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, and shot 46% from the field. I thought in the first half that Anthony Edwards had a very solid game. Obviously, we had the start to the game that was just piss poor. You shot 0 for 12 to start that. And, like, realistically speaking, you don't shoot 0 for 12. You even make 4 of those shots. We're in a completely different situation. And that goes to show that every little thing matters. You hear it on the broadcast. You hear it growing up playing sports that like these little things in these big games, they come out and they matter astronomically. And I thought in the second half, the Spurs just I don't want to say boxed Ant, but they definitely made life a lot more difficult on Ant than it was in the first half. And I think that we talk all the time about Ant and how he's so phenomenal at working on his flaws in the offseason. And I think that this offseason, if you're Ant, you gotta learn how to play off ball. You gotta learn how to use screens. You gotta learn how to get open. Because come playoff time, when Julius Randle's not having a good game, when Jaden McDaniels has his worst game of the playoffs, it's pretty easy to send two guys at Ant the second he crosses half court, and that just makes it that much more difficult, especially having a rim presence like Victor Wembanyama. Because in most situations against most teams, it's a kick out to a three. You should take the shot, or you take an easy drive into the lane, but you happen to have a 7'5" demigod standing in the lane. So, what did you gauge off Ant's performance tonight from the first game with no minutes restriction?
Yeah, I think ultimately really positive. He was really good. He was electrifying in that the first quarter, at the end of the first quarter. I was about to say in the second quarter because it felt like the second quarter. It felt like the first quarter was two quarters where we were
Yeah.
god awful to start the game and had 1 point for like 6 minutes. And then we woke up and were awesome to end the first quarter. And he was a huge reason why. And he looked like himself, hitting threes, getting to the rim. He was awesome with the floater, difficult floaters in the lane. He was obviously like essentially the only positive offensive player besides Nas, and Rudy was good offensively, but often that's a byproduct of kind of like loose balls and hustle plays. If you're talking generating real offense, it was pretty much Ant and a nice scoop of Nas. But I did think he was a little non-existent down the stretch in the fourth quarter, and I think there's a million excuses that you could give him that would be totally legitimate. Obviously the conditioning, the knees, first time playing this many minutes against a really good Spurs defense with really good young athletes that were blitzing the hell out of him. But if you're Anthony Edwards and you're in the stratosphere that he's in, and you've been to back-to-back Western Conference Finals, and you're facing off with Wemby, and it's like a face of this league off, if you will. Um, you need to be superhuman
Yeah.
in the clutch, especially, and that's what he's been all year long. And I felt like, to your point, I felt like he did a ton of standing around and not getting himself involved when they were taking him out of the play. You could say he's just trying to free it up so they can play 4-on-4 on the back end because they were blitzing him to a crazy degree. I mean, you said the second he crossed half court, there were several times where they were blitzing him before he crossed half
Oh
court,
yeah.
like backcourt double teams. So there's only so much you can do there. You got to get off the ball there. But like you said, get yourself back in the play, cut off ball, offensive rebound. Do more. You have to do more. It's asking a tremendous amount of him because he gave it all on the floor tonight, and he's obviously limited and probably exhausted. But you're in the top level, if you make a top tier in the NBA big enough, he's in that.
Oh
And
yeah.
you have to ask a tremendous amount of a guy like that. And we needed a little bit more from him down the stretch to win this game, despite him being pretty awesome. I mean, probably his best game of the entire playoffs so
Oh, I
far.
think easily,
Even
yeah.
even before the second injury, he's obviously injured already going into the Nuggets series. He didn't have a great game. Game 2 of the Nuggets series, he was pretty good, but I think he was like 10 of 25 from the floor in that game. This was his best game of the playoffs, which is just insane. Yeah,
Yeah.
when you think about what he's dealing with and how good this defense is. He obviously likes this Spurs matchup. But unfortunately for the Timberwolves, we needed him to be Superman like plus 10 tonight, and we couldn't quite get there.
Absolutely. And now that we kind of got our vent sesh out and we kind of focused on the negatives and whatnot, we're going to go to a quick ad read. And then I think that personally, despite taking the loss, there were a lot of positives that we could take away from this game. And after this ad read from 612 Tees, we're going to get into those positives.
Today's show is brought to you by 612tees.com. And if I'm going to shop for Minnesota Timberwolves gear to look fresh, to stand out, to have something different, I'm going to our friend Cole, who we partnered with. Shout out to Cole. He's a local Minnesotan. And again, I'm big on supporting Minnesota local brands. That's 612tees.com, all spelled out, not the number 612, the words 612tees.com. And this is going to bring you to the best website out there for the freshest gear for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I absolutely love it. I shop there right now with my team. When we want to stand out at the games or going to our next watch party, 612tees.com.
Big thank you to Cole and 612Ts for sponsoring today's episode. And as you guys heard Evan there, go slide on over to 612Ts and go get your Wolves merch today. So, like I said before, a quick ad read, we kind of got some of the, I guess, quote unquote, air quotes for the listeners on podcast, negatives and just our thoughts out of the way. But again, let's go to the positives. I thought that Naz Reid had a phenomenal game tonight. You know, Nas has been dealing with the shoulder, and he had to be quite honest, a bad end of the season, just considering how well he was playing post All-Star break and pre-All-Star break before he hurt that shoulder. And in the playoffs, Nas has been the Wolves' leader in offensive rating. I believe he was at a 111.1. I don't have the exact stat pulled up, but tonight, Nas made big shot after big shot. When it seemed like the game was about ready to get out of hand, it really seemed like you'd find Nas Reid in the corner and he would show up bigger than ever, you know? And I think that, you know, we've talked about this in the game 1 win. We talked about this in the game 2 loss. I think that, you know, you have to, and I guess I should say there is another variable in this, but the big on big pick and roll, man, getting Victor Wembanyama out of the paint and figuring out how to get him in a ball screen and make a decision when you have a big who can handle the ball like Nas Reid and can do things that most guys at 6'10", 6'11", however tall he is, can do. And then to have a bruiser like Julius Randle in there, I think that, you know, that's a recipe for success. And the other thing that I saw tonight offensively that I liked, during the first quarter when we started to make that comeback and a little bit towards the fourth until they pulled him out, the Wolves need to hunt De'Aaron Fox in any chance they get. We saw teams do it with Mike Conley throughout the entire regular season. We saw the Lakers do it to Reed Shepherd the whole series. We've seen teams do it to Jalen Brunson, CJ McCollum. The list just goes on. When you have these small guards who are just unable to, you know, I guess, man up and play defense against the Anthony Edwards of the world, the Jaden McDaniels, the Ayo Dosumas. You have to take advantage of that, you know? And I thought that the Wolves found a lot of great offense. You know, you could, in the first quarter specifically, you had Wemby guarding Jaden standing in the corner because then that's another thing, how bad Jaden's been shooting. But you have Wemby stuck in the corner and you have him out of the lane and you can you have a little bit more open flow to your offense. You can figure out how to work De'Aaron Fox to the other side of the floor and figure out how to get him in a one-on-one matchup or a screen and roll. But yeah, I guess what's kind of your take on that, and how did you gauge the offensive game tonight from Nas?
I thought he was amazing. I tweeted during the game, Nas is playing his ass off. He was awesome. He's been playing his ass off, even if it's not been going well. I thought he's been playing really hard and doing what he could, despite struggling offensively and clearly being hampered by the shoulder. I mean, every other game he's on the ground clutching it in pain, and I don't think he's doing any sort of acting job because he keeps getting up and playing through it. I think he is in a tremendous amount of pain. But the last couple games, especially tonight, he really got his mojo back. He looked like Nas. He looked like he was moving confidently, looked like he had some mojo going, and he was knocking shots down. I mean, him hitting that three in the first quarter when we had 3 points was like a legitimately massive point in the game. We needed to see the ball go through the hoop. He hits a three, you know, comes in off the bench, colds, comes in, hits a three, and gets us going. And he hit big shot after big shot tonight. He I feel like at times has a tendency to kind of try to force it. You know, he knows we need him off the bench to score points. And he has some like really frustrating turnovers at times where he's like stumbling and losing the ball. 18 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 0 turnovers, 2 blocks for Nas Reid, a +5. He was one of our, you know, Anthony was out there for so many minutes that he's got the -10. He obviously was great for us. I'm sure if you look at the tape, he had some defensive lapses, and that's probably why he's -10. Um, but Nas was one of our best two. I think he was one of the best two players out there. I think him and Ant were both great, and it's a real testament to Nas Reed and how much of a warrior he is for battling through this. And this is a really tough team to be playing against, and to be able to get buckets like that, and have such he's 6 for 13 from the floor. I don't want to say so efficient, but 18 points on 13 shots, 5 assists, 0 turnovers. That's really good stuff for a guy who's battling some injuries. Um,
100%.
to your point on De'Aaron Fox, though, they have very few weak links out there,
Yeah,
and he's one of them on defense. If you want to tell me that you think he's not as bad of a defender as we're saying he is, that's fine. He's the weakest link.
yeah,
Whatever you want to call him. Maybe you can pull up some metrics and tell me he's not as bad a defender as we're making it seem. He's the weakest link. You have to try to attack it against this team, because they have a ton of really strong links that make up an exceptional 5 on defense. And so you got to do you got to do what you got to do against this Spurs defense, putting him in actions that force him to defend, especially forcing him to defend guys that are bigger and stronger than him, which is pretty much everybody on our team except for maybe Mike or Bones, who didn't even see the floor tonight. I mean, if we're going with the 5 that closed game 1, which was TJ, Ant, Jaden, Nas, Rudy, I believe, unless it was maybe
I
Randall.
think you're right.
Maybe it was Randall instead of
Yeah,
Rudy. It was big. Whatever it was, the backcourt was TJ, Ant, Jaden. De'Aaron Fox can't guard any of those guys. You got to punish him for that. You got to punish him for that for sure.
100%. And with kind of like bouncing off of that point with the closing lineup, with Terrence Shannon Jr. Tonight, TJ, he didn't have the best offensive game, but I thought that TJ's impact, it was he's taken over the Dante DiVincenzo role. That's what I've been saying since Dante hurt his Achilles. He's the guy that's making all the little plays that aren't showing up in the stat sheet. Because you see Terrence Shannon's stats tonight, 28 minutes, 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and you're like, well, Matt, what the hell are you talking about? The dude was a plus 20,
Yeah,
and I
that
think,
pops. That pops. That's a crazy number in 28 minutes in a game that we lost by 7.
and
When
that's
he
what
was
I'm
off the
saying.
floor, plus 21. When he was off the floor, we lost those minutes by 14.
Yeah, so Terrence Shannon, dude, he has been a winning player and a saving grace for us, and I I I kind of lost my train of thought actually, but yeah, Terrence Shannon, a little bit of that plus 20, I think, kind of does go back to the end of that first quarter run when he came in and rattled off 12 straight to end the first. But regardless, you take that out, and then he'd be a +8 if you want to take away Ant's 12 points, not even
Yeah.
accounting or thinking about any of the Spurs buckets. It was him and Nas. They were the most impactful guys tonight. And early in the game too, I thought that Io, he didn't really look like himself. I think you could tell that the calf was bothering him a little bit. And it kind of does raise the question too. The Wolves started tonight with Mike Conley. He got his first stint, and then he didn't see the floor again. Do we maybe, coming into game 4, do you think that there's a possibility that we run a Terrence Shannon, Anthony Edwards backcourt? Because I really loved your point that, De'Aaron Fox is just simply not going to be able to hang with them. Versus when you have Mike Conley on the floor. And again, I'll preface this. I'm aware he only played 4 minutes, but you need to have a matchup advantage. In Mike's 4 minutes, he was a -10 tonight. So those 4 minutes were pretty big. And again,
Yep.
it attributes to the Wolves missing how many shots. The Spurs were just playing better at the beginning of the game. But I think that Terrence Shannon has showed, he's ready. He's ready to play. He is going to make the little plays. He's going to put his body on the line.
Yeah.
I guess the only
Definitely.
critique I really have for TJ tonight is there were a few times that I think I saw him take it into the lane and kick it out when I was like, dude, you're a freight train. Just go up. You need to try to pack it. Like
Yep.
the dunk that he missed against, I think it was Carter Bryant or Devin Vassell, one of those. Like I jumped out of my seat and I was like,
Yeah.
whoa,
That was a great attack. There was
yeah,
one attack where he was coming flying full speed into the lane, or at least into the into the, the 2 point area, like from basically from the other free throw. He was on a dead sprint, basically the full court. And I thought he could have just taken it the entire
Yeah.
way and blasted his shoulder into somebody, maybe even dunked it and had a crazy highlight dunk. And he decided to kick it out to the corner, and it ended up as a turnover. So I totally agree with you. He was great. Without being awesome, didn't score the ball very well. So obviously could have been better, but to impact the game the way that he did, despite not scoring, shows some serious growth for him in a small amount of time, because that was not a strong suit of his, was contributing in other ways beyond scoring. It was, the microwave scorer who might make some other mistakes and have some lapses on defense. He played incredible defense tonight.
I think he's played incredible defense all series at that
Yeah,
too.
laying. I mean, it's good. It's a good matchup for him. I think it's guys who are playing physical ball like he can, and he can match that physicality. Drawing charges, laying his body on the line, like you said, making it really tough on Steph Castle. He played really well despite not being able to score the ball. It's interesting that you say he's filling the Dante role, which he is, but they do it in such different
Yeah,
ways. The different type of players there, but he's ascending, and we've hit a wall here in these last 2 games, and I feel like Finch has, whether it's been because his hand has been forced in these playoffs due to the injuries and the lineups that he's been left with, he's been willing to experiment and pull some different levers. I would not be surprised if we saw him in the starting lineup on Sunday night.
absolutely. And to the point with Terrence Shannon too, excuse me, but obviously we've talked about it on this podcast how many times. If you're a fan of the NBA at all, you know that Terrence Shannon is at his best when he's in the transition, right? And I think that that is my big takeaway after seeing 3 games. In game one, in the game that we won, San Antonio won the fast break points 27-10. In game two, San Antonio won the fast break points, a miserable 29-5. And tonight, they won the fast break points again, 13-7. And it's been pretty clear, the Wolves have had what? Quick math, real quick, 22 transition fast break points this whole series. That's less than the Spurs had in game one, less
Pretty
than the
bad.
Spurs had in game two. So what do you do? How do you get out in transition? You give the ball to the guys that like to run. You get it to Terrence Shannon. You have to get it out to Naz Reid. I think that, San Antonio, they're such physical defenders, and we haven't talked about it much, but there were some questionable calls tonight. But with the calls, with the intent, I'll say it like this: with the intensity of defense that San Antonio plays with, it is very similar to an OKC style of defense. How do you beat OKC? The same way you beat San Antonio. You got to get out, you got to run. You cannot let their defense get set up in the half court. So I think that, like you said, Terrence Shannon in the starting lineup, I think that, you got to get out and go. You got to put your foot on the gas. You got to set the tone early. And I think that Terrence Shannon would do wonderful things, especially for the transition offense for us. And I guess kind of moving on to my next point now before we kind of wrap up today's show, man. We got to talk about it. What's been going on with Julius Randle this playoffs? Like, he had such a great playoff run last season and was in many ways our best player last year. But this year, it's a little bit reminiscent of the year that Julius ended up getting, or the year before Julius ended up getting traded from New York prior to the shoulder injury. Like, I don't want to say playoff dropper. I don't want to say that because of what he did last year for us. But Julius has just looked rough, man, on both sides of the ball tonight. I thought in the first half, it's been a talking point all year. He looked like his feet were stuck in the mud on defense. There were a few times that, shots went off the rim, and I saw it go to the weak side of the court, and Julius was kind of standing like short corner, kind of close to the perimeter if you must, and two and a half steps, you're there and you get that ball. But Devin Vassell would out hustle him. Keldon Johnson would just simply out hustle him. And then offensively, he kind of reminded me of Ant to start the game in game two. it kind of looked like he was forcing stuff, kind of looked like he wasn't really playing within the flow of the offense. Just hasn't looked like himself. And tonight comes out, no assist for Julius Randle. And say what you want, that is very, very uncharacteristic of Julius, especially with how we have been using him kind of as the hub. And just with where he's been getting his touches, you're seeing a majority of the touches right on, like, just right inside the wing. You're getting him at the free throw line, but San Antonio has played him really well, and it kind of feels like they're telling him, if you're gonna beat us, dude, you got to shoot the damn ball. And kind of feels like he's fallen for it a little bit in the first half. But what's been your 2 cents on the Julius Randle struggles so far?
Yeah, it's not been great. He's so hot and cold, and it feels like it snowballs one way or another. And when he's in a groove, when he's playing in like kind of like a flow state offensively, and it's all clicking for him, he looks unstoppable at times. He looks like he scores the ball. I mean, we saw it down the stretch in game one. He got some really tough ISO buckets when Ant maybe didn't quite look himself, although he was scoring the ball pretty well in the fourth quarter as well. So
Yeah.
maybe that's not totally, but we kept attacking the Julius Randle mismatch. They went to Julius Randle in the ISO in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, game one, and he was excellent. And he's a great passer. He's got great vision. But once it starts to get clunky, it's like he's overthinking maybe a lot of the time and makes really confusing decisions. And it's a maddening experience at times. And it's one thing to maybe not be clicking offensively, but to give it your all and contribute in as many ways as possible, off the ball or on defense, like you said. But when you're not doing those things either, consistently, because we've seen him lock up on defense. We've seen
Yeah.
him play incredible defense at times. He's a good matchup for Wemby. He can get in his body and really impact him. We obviously all saw that in that regular season matchup. He was incredible against Wemby on defense. He's got it in him. That's what makes it so frustrating. He's obviously physically capable, but there's just these confusing mental lapses a bit too often. Him and Cat are so similar
Yeah.
in that way, where they can be so frustrating. Maybe not in the same ways. Maybe they don't frustrate you in the same exact ways, but they are physically capable and skilled, and yet they just make these mental mistakes sometimes. Like there was an overhelp from Randall late in the game where
Yeah.
Rudy's guarding Wemby, and sure, Wemby might make the shot, and I understand the tendency to want to overhelp on Wemby and shut him down, but we got Rudy there contesting in a perfect position, and he overhelps and gives up a layup. I don't remember who it was that he left under the basket, but he left him for just a wide open layup. And then there's that fast break. He's got a 2-on-1 with TJ running alongside him, and he just like slows up and takes a really difficult layup instead of dunking it on somebody like we've seen him do multiple times this
Like we
series,
saw
or
earlier in the game.
or throwing the lob to TJ. And it's just been confusing. And I'm getting a lot of texts, about people not being thrilled with Julius.
Me and you
Um,
both.
and I get it for sure. The problem is, we've seen the good Julius, and if you're Finch, who's obviously got a Julius fetish, he's going to have a tough time going away from that, especially when we're this thin. We have 7 playable guys. They basically played 7 guys tonight because Mike played 4 minutes. So 8 guys played, but Mike played 4 minutes, and Io hit some big shots down the stretch, but he was shaky,
Yeah.
very shaky out there. There was a point where I thought he needed to get off the floor. And at that point, if you're not going to play him or Mike or Bones, we've got 6 guys. So if we've got 6 or 7 guys that we're willing to play, Julius has to be one of them. There's no way around that. So you can't just say we can't play Julius anymore. You got to find a way to use him effectively and motivate him and get him in that 2025 Warriors series Julius Randle mode, because we've seen him be dominant. And I do got to call out our guy John Stark here. He didn't fully agree with our Nas take, or my Nas take, at least here. I feel like amazing, really good. We're kind of splitting hairs there. But I thought in a game like this that was really tough for people to score, and there weren't a ton of positives for the Wolves when we needed buckets. Nas was, hey, maybe I'll take it back. I'll agree with our guy John. He was really good. He was really good. And we did need that from Nas, and we need that from Julius Randle in a big way. We also need it from Jaden McDaniels, who is 5 of 22. But Jaden has so much social capital with the Timberwolves fans right now that I don't even feel like diving too much into it because I love Jaden McDaniels too much.
Yeah, right. Everybody loves Jaden. And kind of going back to your IO point, since Ios came to Minnesota, he's always been one of those guys that's been on my radar. I used to be a big college basketball guy, right? Ayo Dosunmu has always been a smart player. That is something that has always blown me away with just how smart he plays with his basketball IQ. I didn't watch a ton of him in Chicago. I know that he was kind of buried there a little bit on the Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan Bulls team. But this year, I just haven't seen him turn the ball over. And tonight in 30 minutes, he had 4 turnovers, and that's really,
Yeah,
really, really uncharacteristic of Io, just especially with how he plays. He's super smart, super conservative with the ball. He never really tries to do too much. And I feel like, they made the point on the broadcast tonight. You can't show teams that you're hurting in the playoffs because going back to your De'Aaron Fox point, they're going to look at it as the weak link, you
yeah,
know? And I almost wonder, as part of that, it's the heel, it's the calf, whatever it may be. Obviously Io said, Finch, whatever, I'm good to play. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna give it my all tonight. But I think that is something to monitor just a little bit. And again, it's the playoffs. Everybody is dealing with something. Ant's got the knees, Nas has the shoulder, Io has the calf, the Achilles, whatever it may be, the heel. But all in all, what can you do? All you can do tonight is tip your cap to the Spurs. They played a better game. It didn't look like they wanted it more tonight, so that is a positive way to look at it.
for sure.
And before we wrap up today's show, going into game 4, it is an absolute must-win game now. It is going to be season on the line. But we've seen crazier things, I should say. We saw 2-3-1 upsets in the playoffs, but the San Antonio Spurs are not the Boston Celtics without their best player. And they are most definitely not the Orlando Magic, who have had a shaky season all year. So, with it being a must-win game, what do you think the Wolves need to do to come out and capitalize in game 4 on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. I don't think this is a team that you have any sort of mental edge over. I think this is a team that's really sound. I think they're well coached and they're just like well adjusted. They obviously haven't been on this stage before. Even their veterans like Harrison Barnes, Luke Cornett, they've won championships. They're minor contributors. De'Aaron Fox has never been to the second round of the playoffs, so you maybe have that edge, but I really don't think you're gonna catch them sleeping or catch them on an off night or get any sort of like effort lapse from the Spurs. I think you have to come out with some sort of tweaked game plan to attack this Spurs defense and attack Fox and get them to change what they're doing and try to move Wemby around. Maybe you go to that small ball lineup a little bit more. As good as Rudy was putting the ball in the hoop tonight, maybe it's making it too difficult on others to score the basketball. I think Finch has to get creative offensively, get creative with the lineups, as creative as he can be given the limited roster that he has right now. Make or miss league, we got to make some threes. I mean, we were 14 of 40, which isn't awful, but we're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league this year. We've got to be excellent shooting the three if you're going to be driving and kicking on this defense and not able to finish at the rim as much. We obviously want them to keep attacking at the rim, but you got to be able to knock shots down. And so I think getting creative offensively, trying to continue to wear Wemby out. He played an incredible 37 minutes tonight, but he's not been this deep in the playoffs. I'm not saying he can't do it, but you got to test him. I think you got to continue to test him physically, whether it's, bumping him, attacking him, just being relentless with Wemby. I think wearing him down, attacking Fox, getting them to do something different defensively and getting creative offensively are going to be key to coming out and winning this game 4, which they have to do.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with everything that you just said right there. And I think for me, it's got to be, we got to have at least 3 guys show up. It can't be an Ant and a Nas. There has to be a third guy that's got to show up. take some of the pressure off and whoever else it may be. We've been talking about it all playoffs with the Julius struggles. Jaden's had a great playoff. So, and again, like you said, he's so loved by the Timberwolves community that it's kind of like, you're not going to play perfect all the time. You're going to have a bad game. It's part of the sport, make or miss league, like you said. So I think that you're going to have one of those two guys. They're going to have to show out, especially on the offensive side of the ball, if you're going to
Yeah.
want to come out and get this game 4 win in Target Center on Sunday. Well, with that being said, we will end up seeing you guys on Sunday after the game at 6:30, which is absolutely wonderful. And I know that you're absolutely ecstatic about that because you don't have to stay up till 1 in the morning for that game.
I sure
So,
am.
yeah, with that being said, I think we are going to wrap up today's show. So, big thank you to all of you guys tuning into a now early morning Saturday podcast with the Daily Wolves Courtside. And with that being said, as always, guys, go Wolves.
Yes, sir.